if I start a little bit of introduction, then the people that are still coming in won't miss anything very much. So welcome to the first of our lunchtime webinars as part of Church's Count on Nature 2025. At the end of this webinar, I will share a slide with all the other ones on, just to remind you what a cracking programme we have got, and hopefully you've already booked onto all of them, but if not, please do so, because I do think it's a really interesting programme. I'm really pleased with it. I'm Harriet Carty. I'm the Director of Caring for God's Acre, and I'm really delighted to be doing the first of these webinars, which are sponsored by the Church of England through their environmental programme. So that's great. But the webinars are for anybody, whether you have any affiliation with the Church of England, whether you're in England or not. They're hopefully universal for anybody who's involved with, interested in helping manage and care for a burial ground of any type. Just a little bit of housekeeping. It is being recorded, so if we've turned off your videos anyway, but hopefully everybody's happy with that. And we've also turned off the sound, mainly because we've got so many people coming in that it really improves the sound quality if everybody else is muted apart from the speaker. So when we come to questions, we are going to ask you to type them in the chat, and I'll just work through them and hopefully answer them all. You can put a question in whenever you like. You may put one in and then find out that later on in the talk it's answered. That's fine. That happens a lot. We won't mind. We'll just go, hopefully we answered that one. We will send out the webinar to everybody who's registered fairly soon after it's concluded, and it'll be live. It'll be available to watch, either rewatch, or if you know people who weren't able to watch it today, they can register and get it until about the end of June. And after that, we'll stop that. But at some point, it will appear on the Church of England's website as well. So I think, with no more ado, I will crack on. Oh no, my slide didn't move. And with quite a bit more to do, because my slides won't move. In comes Anna to sort it out.
Let's stop the shift and start again. See if that helps.
That was the one I opened, but maybe it'd be better to open it and not open it as a slideshow, perhaps.
There we
go. Right, start again. Okay. So, Caring for God's Acre is a conservation charity, and it's been running for about 25 years. And it started in the beautiful Shropshire Hills, which is where we still are, where I'm sitting in Craven Arms. And the aim of the charity is to make burial grounds beautiful, welcoming, and connected to their communities. And we're interested in trying to help and support and encourage and engender interest in all types of burial grounds, from rural church and chapel yards to green burial grounds and large urban cemeteries. So it started as a project in what was then the area of outstanding natural beauty. Now it's the national landscape in the Shropshire Hills, to support those caring for churchyards, particularly. There are a huge number of small rural churchyards, and they were managed by church wardens, vicars, PCC members, helpful volunteers, neighbours, all sorts of people chipped in and helped. But they were managing absolutely outstanding biodiversity, and they didn't necessarily know that that was the case. And sometimes that made them very anxious as well, when they did know that they'd get it wrong or do something a bit wrong. So the charity started to help those people, but very soon the focus widened. It very soon became clear that you cannot just think about the nature in a burial ground. You have to see them as a wider site involving people, a sacred place full of built heritage, and manage them holistically. So in this talk, I'm going to cover the 5-point plan that we devised practically on the ground, working with people who were facing real issues to help them manage their sites. Oh, I've missed a slide. Anyway, never mind. I'll stick with this one for a bit. So they're complicated places to manage. I think that's really important, and a really important thing for you to kind of hold on to and remember. First of all, they have a variety of functions. Funerals, obviously, and burial, but also weddings and fates. They're places people pass through. They have lunch when on a walk. They may have a little sit in the middle of their working day. They're places for relaxation and remembrance. They also contain unique and often irreplaceable heritage. That might be veteran trees. We hold the global population for veteran yews, for example, in the UK, most of which are in churchyards. They may have rare species, fantastic built heritage, and they also hold the local history of a community. And if that wasn't enough, those two things, they're nestled in the hearts of communities, and people have strong affection for them and also feelings about how they should be cared for, and a wide variety of expectations about what they should look like. So it's not surprising you need a bit of need a plan. It's not surprising you need a bit of help. So this slide comes from the church heritage records of England and Wales combined, and each cross marks a church or a cemetery. It doesn't include the Welsh chapels, so actually Wales would look a lot more blue when we've managed to get those on as well. So there are over 25,000 burial grounds that we know of, and we suspect more, about the size of Exmoor National Park if you put the whole area together. So a really significant land holding. And I think I'd like to make the point is that if you're struggling with something to do with managing a site, you really are not alone. You really are not alone. And hopefully we can help you and support you and maybe put you in touch with other people who might have had the same issue or opportunity. So if you've ever felt like this, a few of you with a rather overwhelming site, and wanted to feel like this, working to a plan with a clear vision, working together with a group of people in a proactive way. Hopefully this webinar will help you. So our management planning process has 5 steps: research, create a map, plan, inform, review, and celebrate. And I'm going to work through those 5. Number 1 is research. This shouldn't take too long, actually. People often get quite bogged down in this, but they don't need to. And most of it is online now, which also really helps. First of all, the natural environment. You may have site protections or designations on your entire churchyard or cemetery. Occasionally, they're SSSIs, sites of special scientific interest. But more often, they might have a county level designation, be a local wildlife site or a site of importance for nature conservation. The name varies from county to county. But those designations give an idea, an indication of the richness of the whole site. Similarly, you may have protection of individual species. That includes bats, great crested newts, many of our reptiles. And you need to perhaps contact your local authority or wildlife trust if you find out that you have one of these designated species, and just seek a bit of advice. If you've got an Anglican site, then do look on the Church Heritage Record or the Church Heritage Cymru, and look in the churchyard and environment pages of those websites. That gives you information on designations, on special species where you might need a bit more help and advice, and also on veteran trees. It's really important at this stage to remember that this record is very, very far from complete. If something isn't recorded, it doesn't mean it isn't there. Absence does not mean absence. So the other area you need to check is the built environment. Again, a range of designations. There might be individually listed monuments, or maybe lich gates or sundials. You may have an archaeological site. You may be within a conservation area. Again, for Anglican sites, the church heritage records are very useful. But if you're not an Anglican site, you can also look on English Heritage or Cadw on their websites. And if you're from Scotland or Northern Ireland, I do apologise, but I haven't actually checked who you look up now. So please ask me and I will find out for you. This step may feel a little bit boring and, you know, desk-bound, but do remember all this information will be really useful if you're planning interpretation in the future. So changing management can have an impact. It can have an impact on species and it can have an impact on how you work. So do take a bit of time to find out what's known. And as well as those designations and protections, there's also just finding out what species are there, common ones or rare ones that other people have before recorded. I think it was the 1970s when the WI surveyed a huge number of churchyards for botany. So see if there's a record of that somewhere, maybe in your local archives, or maybe there's a paper copy in a parish office. The British Lichen Society has surveyed most churchyards. Also, local people may know all sorts of things. You may find out you've got a keen bird watcher next door who's been watching things for years. We're working with the NBN, the National Biodiversity Network, and have been for quite a few years now, to collate all of the records that are known and get a bit of a national picture on just how good for biodiversity burial grounds are. Very far from complete, but useful starting point to see what's in your site. So if you go onto the NBN Atlas, you'll find, you can choose which atlas, and you'll find the Beautiful Burial Ground Atlas is one of the ones you can choose. And the other day, I just popped York Cemetery into the search bar, and this is what I found. So we're going to map, and if you go onto the overview page, you get a list of the species, and you can click on them and see what's a bit more about them when they were recorded, for example. So by just messing about on this for a few minutes, I was able to find out that 150 species have been recorded. In 2011, there were meadow grasshoppers. 2012, an adder. And in 2019, there was a lot of activity. I wonder whether somebody did some sort of nature count or bioblitz. 38 plants were recorded, 78 insects, and hedgehog, wood mice, and various bats. So I think you can quickly see that that's very useful information. You might think, oh, grasshoppers, there was clearly long grass there a while ago. Hedgehogs, let's see what we can do to make sure it's still a welcoming place for hedgehog. So number two, when you've done your research, the next thing is to create a map, starting with a base map. You may already have one. It does need to be pretty accurate. Not a sketch map, ideally more accurate than that, but it doesn't need to be perfect by any means. So you may already have one that you can use, but if not, have a look on the internet. The top two maps on this slide just come from a simple internet search. And the bottom two come from the Church Heritage Cymru and the Church Heritage Record. When you found a good map, it's good to scan it if you can and email it to everybody who might be contributing to this plan. If not, make copies, print it and make copies and do the same. Then you've got everybody working on the same map, and that will really help you to keep things together. So you take your map and you start to map on the things that you know about already. This isn't about the change, this is about where we are now. So mark on entrances, buildings, paths, those listed structures that you've just looked up in your research phase, war graves, veteran trees, other trees and shrubs, gaps in the wall. Think how you use the site and mark on things that you need to consider, such as, is there a place of new burials? Is there a place of recent and very frequently visited graves? Do you like to erect a marquee every now and again and have a fete? And also, how do you manage it now? Do you have short grass everywhere? Have you got an overgrown bit that needs a bit of extra management? Have you got a compost pile? Those sorts of things. Again, this can be hand drawn. Don't worry about thinking we must have a digital map. Use that base map and just get your pens and paper, pencils out, and start drawing and colouring in. So the next stage, number 3, you then plan what you want to do, how things are going to change. Many things won't change, but some things perhaps will. It's really good, if you can, at this stage, number 3, to start to involve more people. The more people that can contribute to planning what to do, the more chance you have of the map and the management plan really working and really being embraced and something that people follow for a long time. It's good to agree on a vision. And that vision you can keep referring back to as you're making decisions. So in this case, the vision is that this burial ground is cared for in a way that makes it a special place for visitors, in keeping with its function of burials, a fit setting for the church, and a haven for wildlife. So a very broad brush. So then you take your map and you start to plan where you're going to do particular things. Are you going to have a meadow area that you leave long for 12 to 16 weeks of the growing season? Have you perhaps got a ewe with yellowing needles and you're wondering what's wrong with it? And then you realise it's got a big pile of grave spoil underneath it that needs moving. Is there a patch where the brambles are taking over and encroaching onto the monuments and you'd like to clear them back a bit? Pop it all down on the map and, as I say, involve as many people in this decision making as possible. Grassland management is usually the main decision that needs making. How long to have the grass and where. So I thought I'd just give it a little extra moment. And the first thing to do is to zone your site. Zone your site. And often by doing that, a lot of the disagreements and different expectations that we spoke about earlier can be resolved in a way that most people accept, even if they would like things slightly different. So, for example, we would always advise you to have short grass around entrances, graves that are very regularly visited, war graves around the church, and down the sides of paths, stop grass, long grass falling over the path. If you've got differences of view as to whether a site should be kept very neat or allowed to grow a bit longer, I think a very useful way to look at it is to think about what the site looked like when the person who's buried there was alive. So if it's somebody who lived before the Second World War is a good point, or during it or shortly after it, before about the 1960s. If that was when they were alive, it would probably have been managed as a meadow. The further back you go, the more likely it would have been managed as a meadow, because people didn't have these sort of very efficient mowing machines. So it never would have been kept terribly short, though it would have been grassland and managed. But after that, people started to expect shorter grass, mowers came in. And so after that, perhaps it would be appropriate to keep that memorial and that grave in the setting that they were familiar with. Doesn't always work, but on the whole it does. And it does take a lot of conflict out. Often people are a bit distressed if they can't manage the whole thing as a meadow or something like that, if they're particularly keen on nature. But I would like to stress that a mosaic of grass lengths is actually fabulous for biodiversity. I would argue it's the best thing. Having some short grass is great, as well as being very welcoming and helping you to keep everybody on board with your management planning. It's brilliant for song thrush. They find worms in short grass. You'll see pied wagtails trotting across it. In this slide, you'll see what we call medium grass at the back of the slide. You see all those yellow flowers. That's done by setting the mower blade high, never cutting it very short, so that low flowering things can bloom. Cut about once a month, grass cuttings collected, but never very short. And that's fantastic for hunting amphibians, for bees in particular. It can absolutely buzz with bees. And of course, then there's the longer grass area, the meadow with the summer flowers in it. So try and have a mosaic, and also start small if you're doing a big change, like introducing a meadow area. I've included this slide because I do think as a nation, we do have to have a little bit of a rethink about short grass and what that means and what it looks like. This slide is taken in spring. You can see the blossom on the fruit trees. And the short grass already looks brown. In a changing climate, it may be that it isn't very attractive to mow very, very short. And we should all just set that mower blade a little bit higher. It also uses less carbon because you cut less often. So we've talked about planning what to do and where. The next question is when. And you'll need a seasonal timetable. This one's divided into months of the year. You see them along the top there. You could do it in seasons. Spring, summer, autumn, winter works fine as well. It helps you to plan, and it helps you to see when there's perhaps times of year when you're very busy. And it also is really helps you in asking volunteers to help. People are much more likely to help if you can show them this and go, will you help with the summer raking, rather than just a general ask of will you help. So as well as the seasonal calendar, you also need to plan for a few years. And we found that 3 years is a good amount of time. People can imagine 3 years, and also it helps you to prevent overload in year one. It helps you to spread the work a little and not overdo it and burn your volunteers out. So in this example, you can see that in the first 2 years, there's repair the wall. Perhaps that wall is in need of reparation, and it's important to do that quickly. The other thing that's in year one is build compost bins, whilst starting to manage for long grass is in year 2. And I think that's the point I'd like to make there is think about what the plan that you're doing and the repercussions of it. If you're going to manage for long grass, you've got to deal with that grass. And it's really good if you've got a system for that in place before you suddenly find out the sheer quantity of grass if you leave an area long. In this case, it might be building compost bins. The other way to deal with it might be to find a kindly farmer, or the local council might be able to take it away for you. So number 4, inform. Inform everybody in your community and visitors what's going on. I'll put a couple of our posters up here, which you can download from our website, but you might want to make your own as well. So you might put posters in the porch or notice boards. Try and put them around the community, not just in the churchyard or cemetery. And perhaps you might do some talks or a talk about your planning. Write an article for the parish magazine, and use social media as well to reach out to people. And it's a good time when you're informing to keep inviting people to come and visit and to get involved. And so you might find that you're organising events, in which case we have a simple risk assessment form that you will need to do a risk assessment. So have a look at that and make sure that you have that in place. You may well find that when the wider community know that a site is being managed for people and wildlife, they will engage where previously they didn't. The same goes for the built heritage and for memorial recording and social history. It brings out another group of people who may well become your volunteers. When new people come forward, always ask them what they've seen and keep adding to your knowledge about the site. I've just got a few more examples of informing people here. The top 2 are very, very naughtily pinched from the webinar that's coming on Wednesday, because I thought they were so lovely. I wanted them to have a couple of outings, if you will. So these 2 slides, these 2 signs come from St Lawrence Church in Church Stretton. Isabel and Mike Carter amongst the people who care for that, and we'll be on that webinar on Wednesday. So do come along if you possibly can. And I just thought it was such a lovely way to inform people, rather than do this, don't do that. Just lovely, informative little signs. The bottom one, I think, is sheer genius, the insect hotel. So they've got an old stump that some people might go, well, that needs tidying up. And they've made it clear that it doesn't need tidying up. It's being left for a purpose. Now, again, people might not like that. They might not agree. They might think it looks scruffy, but they can see that for other people, it's important. This one comes from Bednall. And then the fourth one is a town trail, a churchyard trail in Bishop's Castle in Shropshire. More of a traditional one, but that's available both in paper form and to download, and just encourages people to have a look round with new eyes. This period of informing your wider community is also a good time to perhaps run a bit of training. It can be quite informal and fun, and another way of bringing people into the site. Or you might do actual formal training so that your volunteers can manage your site with confidence. Perhaps you might need to learn how to do dry stone or lime mortar walling. These people have just learned how to scythe. Pruning might be very useful. And also identifying species and monument recording. We now have an online memorial recording course, so please get in touch and ask us about that. It's a series of modules and ends up with a certification, so it gives people a lot of confidence. Please use our resources if you're running any sort of event or any sort of training. You'll find them on our website under the resource page. And if you're already taking part in Churches Count on Nature or Love Your Burial Ground Week, you may well have spotted our resources already and hopefully receive some in the post ready for your event. We send out this starter guide. You can see it's available in Welsh and English, and also the Field Studies Council Guide to Wildlife of Burial Grounds. We also have a lot of other online resources, children's events, suggestions, and these starter guides, which just a nice colourful thing that you might like to print off a few and encourage people to wander around and see what they can spot. A lot of people, when they're asked to take part in biological recording, or even monument recording as well, they feel nervous. They feel they're not experts. They feel they might get it wrong. It sounds too scientific for them. So something like the starter guide can really help to break down that feeling and make it clear that actually this is for everybody. Most people, they might tell you they don't know anything, but if you ask them what a robin looks like, they know. Similarly, a frog, they know that holly leaves prickle your finger, that if you've got a molehill, there was a mole there. And similarly, an oak leaf, a daisy, a buttercup. All of these are biological records, and we would like to hear about these common species just as much as about the rarities. So the last of my 5 steps is to review and celebrate. It's really important to review, and I think it often gets missed out, this one, and it's a shame. In fact, I think they both get missed out, and the not celebrating is even more of a shame. But if you can review annually, that is great. And by reviewing, I mean, speak to your volunteers, have an annual meeting, make it part of that celebration. Ask your volunteers what they've done, how they've enjoyed it. Has it been fun? That's the most important thing, really, isn't it? Did they have the right tools? Did they know what they were doing? Did they feel they had sufficient knowledge or skill? And were there enough of them? Do they need a bit more help? Do you need to have a bit of a recruitment drive? Also, it's really good to ask people if they've got any ideas they'd like to bring. You're producing this 3-year management plan, but it's not set in stone. Somebody comes forward with an idea that everybody feels is in keeping with that original aim and they're keen to get involved with, by all means, incorporate it. Keep it a living thing. Keep using it. I wouldn't suggest you do this every year, but every now and again, it is useful to ask your visitors as well what they think about how the churchyard's managed. And we do have a simple questionnaire that I can send out to anybody who'd like to receive it. And that will be perhaps local people and also visitors coming from further afield. And I think if you are going to do that, in my experience, it's been uniformly positive. People feel that they're going to get a lot of criticism, But on the whole, well, every single time I've known of it being done, it's actually been a positive experience. And they found that there's a lot of support and sometimes offers of help as well. It's another way to eke out a few, winkle out a few of those volunteers who you haven't yet managed to reach. Do remember, if you're asking the wider public how they feel, to keep negative comments in perspective. Remember, these areas are complex and people's expectations vary. And whilst you may find a way to accommodate most views, there will always be a few people at either ends of the extremes who are not happy, as there is in everything in life. Do be careful not to allow negative comments from a vocal few to cause changes in something, in how you manage something that most people are actually happy with. And last, but most definitely not least, do remember to celebrate. Celebrate yourselves. Thank all your volunteers and pat yourselves on the back for creating a management plan, organising this and caring for this incredibly special place that all of us value and a few of us care for. I've mentioned various web links as we've been going along, and they are down here. Please don't reach for a pen and start trying to scribble them down because we will be sharing the PowerPoint. And that's me done for now. I'd just like to close by reminding you of the other fantastic talks that are coming up. As I've said, do register for them. If you can't make them at the time, you can always listen to them later. And yes, remember that one on Wednesday where you'll see that beautiful churchyard again. I'm now going to stop sharing and ask people, if they haven't already, to get typing, put any questions in the chat, and we have got time for some chat. Okay, thank you very much. So, I'm just scrolling down to start with the questions. Oh dear, Jackie, we have a helpful person, unknown, who keeps on doing things we're doing. Oh, they've moved markers, moved your log pile. Yes, that's very exasperating. I have great sympathy for you, and yes, I've known sites with phantom mowers as well. You come along in the morning and the whole thing's been mown by who knows who. It's very difficult that until you can find the person, and then you can have the conversation, of course, and explain why you're doing what you're doing, and try and get them on board. And obviously thank them for doing what they probably thought was a really helpful task, although for you, it must be making you pull your hair out. Well, we have some signs, as you've seen in the talk, so please go on our website and download our signs, our meadow signs. You can make your own. We could make some more, I think, for people. We could have to think about that if there were a lot of people that would find it useful to have some other signs. Woodpile is a good one. I've known this happen before. I've also known it happen when community payback come, when more community payback come than people were expecting, and they have to find them things to do, and so they go and clear out all of the wood piles and cut the hedges and things like that at the wrong time of year. But yes, I think signs are a good start, and also just try and find out who it is. Ask local people if they know, and try and have a dialogue. I think is the most important thing that you can do. I do know of a site that had a phantom mower, as they called it, who was mowing everything incredibly short, and they found out who it was, thanked him very much for being so helpful, and said, would he mind just setting the cutter bar higher? And he did. He was very happy to do that, just needed to be asked. So I have seen it resolved positively, but it is a problem, which Tracy's always got. No, Jane as well. Yes, good point, Tracy. Yes, inform. It's that step number 4, inform people. Just try and reach out to as many people as you can, and try and build up, hopefully, peer pressure to manage it in a certain way as well. If you've got somebody who knows perfectly well what they're doing and they're just undoing your good work, that is going to prove difficult. Thank you very much, Alistair, for OpenStreetMap. Yep, that's another very good map system. So that's very helpful. Yeah. So, yes, Ruth asking about council control over the mowing regime. It is tricky to achieve, Ruth. It is. I've had a lot of people who have closed churchyards that are managed by the council, or cemeteries that are owned and managed by the council, worried that if they push, the council will walk away and just neglect their site and stop managing it. And they can't do that. They won't do that. They won't do that. And I think the best way you can try is to keep pushing them, remind them that they have biodiversity targets as well. They've almost definitely declared a biodiversity crisis. They've also almost definitely declared a carbon crisis. And repeated mowing does use more carbon, so that might be a way to encourage them to engage. I would say over the last 5 years, councils are far more receptive to being asked to manage differently than they were. And you just need to have a really open conversation. And, you know, if they say we can cut it, but we can't rake it, have some way of going, well, we've got some volunteers, we can step in and help you with that. But I mean, yeah, that is their default. They'll have very, very vague contracts with the church when they took it over as a closed churchyard, that it'll be something like keep it in an acceptable state or something very vague. So that does give you some leeway, of course, but it does make it difficult. And it makes it difficult in these times when councils are obviously very hard pressed for cash. So I think the best way is to try and appeal to them on other grounds. I must say also, once you've got a lovely agreement with the council, it may go wrong. They may subcontract and send out a different team. Everybody might agree something and then something else happens. You do have to be patient and work with them and try and keep a sense of humour when things go wrong. Keep that conversation going. Oh, Jane wants the slides immediately, Anna. I don't know whether we can achieve that. She's going to a meeting at 2 p.m. Anna will see what she can do. Good to hear. Good to hear that people are using the resources and finding them useful. Thank you very much for that. Recording memorials. Is there a simple guide for children? There isn't yet, but there jolly well should be, shouldn't there? I'm going to fire that question to my colleagues and keep in touch and watch that space. That will be a lovely thing to do. We do have in the children's resources, we do have a sort of symbol scavenger hunt. So where you have a page with a series of symbols on. Anna, is there any chance you can pop that in the chat? Symbols. Anna will try and get that in before the end of this meeting, which is fun. You look for different symbols, and if you print it out double-sided, the meaning of them prints on the other side of the piece of paper. So we have that, but not actually recording. So maybe we need that next step. First of all, we'll get them engaged and interested and running about and looking for lovely pictures, and then we'll have a think about that. Mike, yes, you've spotted an error. We started off advising people to use iRecord. Your question is about the starter guide says use iRecord, the website iNaturalist. It doesn't matter which is used, and we started off telling people to use iRecord when that starter guide was printed. And we've now shifted to asking them to use iNaturalist because in the intervening time, NBN took over managing iNaturalist in the UK and it linked directly. So it did make a biological record, whereas initially it didn't. It was just a very lovely recording app. And the reason that we suggest iNaturalist over iRecord is it's much, much easier for beginners. If people are already used to recording, then they'll find iRecord fine. But if you've never done it before, iNaturalist encourages you to take a photo and offers you some suggestions of what it is. So it helps you identify. And also by taking that photo, you are then sending that photo to whoever is going to check that record. Because you can imagine if you're a verifier trying to know whether a record is correct or not, you receive a record of something that's perhaps a little rare, perhaps a little unlikely, from somebody you've never heard of, from a site you've never visited. It's an almost impossible job. Whereas if you've got a photo, you've got a really good chance of being able to identify it yourself. And then if that person's got it wrong, they then get back in touch and go, thank you so much. I can see why you thought it was this kind of speedwell, but actually, if you look here, you can see it's another kind. So it's a useful, nice engagement learning thing as well. So that's why we're now telling people to use iNaturalist. Julia, ivy, yes, good question. Ivy is indeed very good for wildlife. It has a high biodiversity value, as you've pointed out, particularly in the autumn. Fantastic source of nectar in the autumn with its late flowers, and the berries are fed on by an awful lot of birds and mammals over the winter. It's not rare though, it's very common, and there is a lot of ivy around. There are times when it's really good to remove ivy and times when you don't need to. So we would always recommend removing ivy from yew trees, particularly veteran yews. This comes from advice from veteran tree experts. We haven't just sort of dreamt that one up ourselves, because ivy can cover a yew so much that it is actually squeezing it and enclosing it. And I have got slides of ivy stems that are sort of as thick as your arm, really forming almost like sort of armor around the tree, and the tree is struggling as a result. Removing it from walls. I'm cautious about removing it from walls because it's often holding them up. So you want to be very careful doing that. And with walls and monuments, I would say the thing to do with ivy is to ask yourself why you're removing it. So with walls, you might go, we're removing it because we haven't got very much of it, and we've got all sorts of other nice plants growing on that wall, and it's also covered in lichens, and it's a beautiful wall. So we don't want it to get covered in ivy, and so we're going to keep trimming it so it doesn't encroach any further. That would be a very good reason for keeping ivy under control on a wall. With a monument, you might go, we are doing a monument inscription recording project next year, so we'll remove the ivy in advance of that so that we can read and photograph those inscriptions. But after that, we might let it go back on some of the monuments because it's very time consuming to remove. It is good for wildlife. And it is actually protective on a simple monument, a simple headstone. Another good reason for removing ivy might be that you've got a complicated monument. You've got a cross, you've got a chest tube, and it's just starting to get ivy on it, because ivy will break those complicated monuments and that have joints. Similarly, though, if you've got something like a chest tomb that's covered in ivy, do not remove it unless you are prepared to repair what is below. That is the advice from Historic England. If you're going to take ivy off when it's really got a hole and it's covering a monument, you've got to have the resources to mend what you may find below, because the ivy may, number one, have pushed it apart, and number two, be holding it together. So it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act, but you're quite right. It does have a great value. Steve, yes, our posters are available bilingually. I'm pretty sure, certainly the yew tree one is. I'm now slightly worrying about the meadow one.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
I've
yes.
put it in the chat.
Oh, yeah, Anna's put it in the chat further down. We've got a look. We've tried to put as much as we can into Welsh as well, and we're intending to keep doing that and increase that as time goes on, hoping to do more and more things in Wales and get more and more Welsh language up on our website and in all our resources. But yes, you will find the posters bilingually. Julia asking about a Methodist church. I don't think any of the research tools are not available to any denomination, or none actually. They're about monuments rather than anything to do with a particular church. So I hope you'll find them very useful. And if there's anything you particularly need to know, please do get in touch with us directly. But yes, hopefully you'll find them very helpful. Now then, where are we going? Nigel, it's important that we think about how the churchyards fit within the wider area and in the context of the development Of local nature recovery strategies. Yes, I totally agree, Nigel. We're working with local landowners to develop a coordinated approach to nature recovery. Yes, a really good point that. There's an awful lot happening at a strategic level at the moment with local nature recovery plans being produced now. They will be on, and if they've got a designation, they will have really popped up on those strategies. If they haven't got a designation, they probably won't. But you can highlight a particularly rich churchyard or cemetery or chapel yard. The best way to really get it into the strategies is to try and get it a designation, see if it qualifies as a local wildlife site. And to do that, you need to talk to your county council, ecologists, or the wildlife trust. But that's the best way, I think, to really get these sites into these strategies. But do have the conversations. And also, there's a lot of landscape scale work going on. You may live in an area where there's a big project happening at the moment. There may be farmer clusters forming who are trying to put in for longer landscape scale restoration, and they may be really interested to know that you've got species rich grassland. They might want the grass, they might want the seed. You can sometimes get farmers to do all your work for you if they take away the green hay and use it to spread in their field margins. So there are definitely connections to be made. We ran a project a few years ago called Opening the Ark, where we were sort of trying to highlight the idea that the churchyard or the cemetery has stayed relatively unchanged, sometimes for many centuries, but certainly for decades, certainly during the period when we've lost so much wildlife. And so maybe it's time now to, open the doors, let the biodiversity back out into the countryside and our towns and cities. So I think that's a nice idea. That might be making routes for hedgehogs to spread out from a churchyard. It might be putting swift boxes behind the louvers in the church and in surrounding houses. It might be using the grass, the seed from the meadow, and spreading that further. All sorts of ways. But yeah, very, very, very good timely reminder that one should, think of it in the wider strategy. Yeah, land registry. Why not? Have you got any tips for how to approach a churchyard that has badgers? From Timothy. My main tip, Timothy, is unless they are absolutely bringing up human remains, I would let them be. I'd let them be. Obviously, I don't know your site, and you may be going, we can't do that. They're making monuments unsteady and they're doing all sorts of things, and it's hopeless. In which case, you need to approach the Mammal Society and have a conversation about what to do. But do not do anything yourself. They're heavily protected. And also, you can move badgers, often at great expense, and then they just come trundling back because they're very fearless and they're very set in their ways. So yeah, I think unless it's a really serious problem, I would let them be and try and learn to live with them and try and think how you can manage in a way that encourages people to walk on other parts of the site or something like that. Yes, Karen, very good point. Yes. Also remind the councils about their responsibilities to their own local nature recovery strategies and try and get your site included into that work. So, hooray, you're answering your own questions. Gail's asked a question about the Church Heritage Records and Alistair's answered it. Thank you very much. I think the Church Heritage Records are amazing, absolutely amazing amount of information on them, and it's being added to all the time. I think they're going to get better and better. So, a really useful tool. Yeah, thank you again, Karen. Yes, that's a very good way. The council cut, and then they let you know when they've cut, ideally in advance, but at least afterwards, or you keep an eye, and then the volunteers come in as quickly as possible and rake. That can work very well. It can be very difficult for councils to rake up. And these aren't sites. They may have cut and collect machines, they may not, but they're often sites that they're needing to trim. So being able to offer the raking is a really good way forward. Ah, Lisa, nice to hear from you. Yes, indeed. Do contact your local wildlife trust, see if they're running a living churchyards project, Sometimes they have awards, which is very good fun, and they do indeed have local resources that are very useful. Angela, hi. Do you have any advice on how to deal with differences of opinion and breakdowns in relationships within volunteer groups to avoid volunteers leaving? Thank you. I'm sorry to hear you're having that problem. If it is a question from personal experience, that's very difficult. I mean, it is always about people feeling listened to, feeling heard, having a chance to talk, maybe listening to people separately, so that if in a general meeting they bounce off each other and become antagonistic. And it's the zoning, I think. It's the zoning. It's having that aim that every idea and new initiative one just ground truths it back and goes, are we still following the aim? Are we still thinking about all our visitors and the use of the space and why it's important to people? And yes, trying to zone it, and perhaps rowing back a bit. You know, sometimes churches try a lot of meadow, a lot of long grass, and actually it's difficult to manage, and people are anxious about it, and they get a wet year and they struggle to cut it. And the thing to do is to go, okay, we've heard you, we're going to pull back, we'll have a small area, we'll see how it is, we'll run that for a few years, and then we'll expand. So I think really just try and listen, as the same as one would with any sort of conflict. Now then, anything else? Any other questions? Siobhan, we have very deep dry shade areas that seem resistant to meadow seeding. Yes, shade, meadows and shade do not mix. They do not mix. Deep shade, you're thinking of woodland. Think of woodland rather than meadow. You might manage to establish spring bulbs, for example. But yes, the meadow area, really, you want to try and choose a place that's in full sun if you possibly can, or if not full, not much shade. Yes, Mike, butterflies are hard to photograph, but photographs are required. They are on my naturalist, I'm afraid. If you don't have a photo, I don't think they're likely to get verified. So you do your best, but they are indeed hard to photograph. I would if you know you've got a site with a lot of butterflies and you really want people to know how good it is, I would get in touch with Butterfly Conservation, see if they've got a local volunteer who can come out, and because the problem, if you just submit a list of the butterflies that you see, if you've identified them, is getting them verified. But you can submit them on iRecord, which doesn't require photos in quite the same way that iNaturalist leads you to photographs. I would say that you can record sound. That works really well with birds that are also hard to photograph, but of course it doesn't work at all with butterflies. But yes, I think see if there's a local enthusiast who would come out, or send in your records anyway and see if they do get verified, or if they spark the imagination of the local county recorder who chooses to come and have a look. And then Anna's put in the grave symbols and the children's activities that we put together for Love Your Burial Ground Week and Churches Council Nature. Something from Tracy here. Oh, that looks like a nice link. I'll have a look at that later. Tracy, thank you very much for that. Alice, asking whether you should send in information every year. I would say yes. I would say yes. There's certainly no harm in it. The more records we have, the better, in a way. People enjoy doing it. So it's partly about them realizing that they can do this, and it's not terrifying and scientific, and it's quite good fun. But also you might start to build up pictures of change over time. So yes, I'd send them in every year. But equally, if you sent in a really good list one year and you haven't got the photos, or something went wrong, and you don't need to, don't worry. We'd love you to send in records, because the more records, the merrier, as far as we're concerned. But yes. A nice comment here from Rachel. Because of the sensitivities around burial grounds, councils need those voices who want more sensitive management to be able to push back against the more traditional management expectations. The more people requesting sensitive management, the more it helps the council departments to argue for it. So please let the council know if that's what you want. Oh yes, such a good point that. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's so true. And it's actually true, it's very true for councils, particularly when people go to their elected representative and make a fuss. It's also true, I think, for churchyards and the church as well. There was a survey done, it's quite a few years ago now, I think it's about 2016, something like that, in Sussex, where people visiting churchyards were interviewed and asked a series of questions. And these were churchyards, many of them were managed for people and nature. And consistently across, I'm going to forget the numbers now, but I think it was 40 or 50 churchyards, there were about 3% who were very anti-wildlife. They wanted it short, they wanted it neat. They wrote some quite grumpy things in their feedback forms, whereas other people would, say they like the peace and the wildflowers. I remember the comment that stuck in my mind was somebody said seeing wildlife made them angry. Now, there may be a reason for that. Maybe they are trying to get to a relative's grave and they can't because brambles have overrun it, and that is, making them feeling really upset. But it is very important to remember that people who want things neat and tidy can be very vocal, and they can sometimes be quite angry about it. I think it feels very threatening to some people. So yes, the more you can express that you like something that's managed in a more sensitive way, the better. Be it getting in touch with your council and saying, so pleased to see this, thank you, or writing in the visitor's book in the church, love the wildflowers. It's really worth doing, really worth doing. And also, of course, really nice to thank the councils and say nice things to councils about how they're looking after things. They get a lot of complaints. Let's give them some positivity as well. Martin, can you advise on maintenance of church monuments, e.g. getting rid of ivy? Well, we've talked a bit about ivy, and you will find some resources as well on our website about when you might want to get rid of ivy, and if so, how, with care, is the answer. I think with maintenance of monuments, you're really needing to go to your diocesan advisory councils or equivalent, if it's a cemetery, to the local authority. Because obviously there's a lot of safety involved, and the monuments are actually owned by the descendants of the deceased. I've gone right back. Where have I gone? Yeah. So we've talked about the showing very quickly. Anna's answering that. We only remove ground ivy and ivy from the fronts of headstones to see the inscriptions. We leave it on the back and remove it on the monuments that have joints after bird nesting season. Exactly, Heather, you've got it exactly right. Exactly right, I would say. Perfect. Well done. Yeah. If you can keep that going, that's brilliant. Yeah, Alan, you're quite right. Ivy in trees does, particularly deciduous trees where they've lost their leaves and can blow around in the winter wind. The big load of ivy can form a sail and can cause them to be blown over. Yeah, yeah. If in doubt, ask a tree surgeon, ask an arboriculturalist what to do. They're usually very sensible. The other reason that ivy can be removed from trees is that they're needing a tree inspection, a safety inspection, and you cannot, the expert can't see the trunk, can't see to make an inspection, and so they'll ask for it to be removed from trees in order to be able to see the full trunk and see if there's any problems. But on the whole, it isn't a problem. So, Anderson, in my local church, we had a large youth group. We encouraged them to get confirmed within a month. Most of them had left. Perhaps the person with the badger idea might consider this. Okay, well, good luck with them. Karen, our local wildlife trust conducted a survey of flora and fauna within our open and closed churchyards, which has been very helpful. Fantastic if they're able to do that, yeah. And I do think also if you organise an event and say you like people to come and survey, all sorts of people will come out of the woodwork. You can collect. The Wildlife Trust is a very good place also to reach out to other interest groups who are particularly interested in recording, such as Mammal Society, butterfly conservation, and moths are very good. Running a moth trap is a lovely thing to do in the churchyard, as well as butterflies. Amphibian and reptile groups may be active in the area. So there's a lot of interest groups, and your Wildlife Trust is often a good central point to find out who's about and who might be able to give a bit of time. I think quite a lot of people will give time if they realise you're thinking about changing the management. You're in the process of doing a management plan. You're seeking advice that may lead to change. It's quite sort of demoralising to come and do a great big survey, and then year after year the whole site is mown short, and actually the number of invertebrates is very low. Whereas if say an invertebrate group knows that you're considering having a long grass area where there might be more insects and other invertebrates, they're more likely to feel that they can give their time, and it becomes quite a positive two-way relationship as well. Should we also send them in at other times, even e.g. snowdrops? Sorry, I'm not quite sure where that one comes from. What do you think?
Records, I think.
Records, yes, please, Alice, yes, please. So we love people sending in records for Churches Council Nature, but really we'd love you to just be out there recording. Get used to iNaturalist if that works for you. Take a pen and pencil if it doesn't, and just tell us what you see all year round, all year round. One of the other groups that's you often find in burial grounds that's really worth recording is fungi in the autumn, grassland fungi. Again, photographs are really helpful because they're absolutely tricky as can be to identify. So you'll never get everything in June. Keep recording all year round. We'd love you to do this. Anything else? We're sort of running out of time, though I'm happy to keep answering the question. Jessica says, Hannah's got the sneezes, so we're going to have to stop soon. Is there a link to that survey somewhere, please, with the 3% figure? It's called The Nature of God's Acre. It's a published booklet, Jessica. I could see if we've got some for sale still, but The Nature of God's Acre by Miles King and Mark Betson. See if you can find it. Any other questions? But thank you. I'm glad people have found it useful. That's really lovely to hear. And here, GWT runs a nationwide survey, Happy Mapping. See their website. All right. More useful links. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of mapping going on. There's a lot of recording going on. There's things you can join. You can join in with nature city challenges and things like that. There's lots of. We're all kind of working together. It's an exciting time, I think. Worrying time, but exciting time as well. Anna's jumping in and answering things for me very helpfully, making my screen jump about there. No, it's fine, Anna. I think that is all the questions that I can see. If somebody's feeling that I've whizzed past their question and not answered it, please send me an email. But hopefully that is everything. And yep, Anna's just put my email address in if you want to follow up on anything. But thank you all for attending. It's been brilliant to have so many people for this first webinar of our series. And yes, do register for the others. Do hopefully listen to them all. I hope together they'll form a really good basis to help you go forward with finding out about these special places and caring for them, and hopefully feeling encouraged and not on your own as well. And so, yeah, I think we'll close at this point, and thank you all again.